period and year-end processing in the general ledger and use the Financial Reporter utility. The periodic processing section of the general ledger module includes functions that allow you to create allocation and recurring entry batches, consolidate posted transactions, revalue multi-currency transactions, perform year-end maintenance, clear history, and perform the year-end function. Let's take a look at general ledger periodic processing.
First, if you are using the auto-allocation feature for GL accounts, you would come here to perform the reallocation function that will take the balance from the posted GL account and reallocate it by percent to the account specified on the account setup. On this window, you can enter a batch description and choose which accounts you would like to reallocate. You can also enter the journal date for the reallocation entry. In the allocation method, you can select to reallocate account balances, quantities, or both. And if you're reallocating quantities, you can specify the quantity period range. Account balances will reallocate the entire balance of the account to other accounts. Clicking on the Process button will perform the reallocation process and create a journal entry batch that can be accessed and edited from the batch list. This batch will need to be posted. If you did not select the setting in Account Setup to post transactions in consolidated format and you still want to consolidate, you can use this function. This function allows you to consolidate accounts by segment or account range and through to a specific period end. You have three options for consolidating posted transactions. You can consolidate by account and fiscal period. This is the highest level of consolidation. It will take the total net change of the account and enter a single transaction detail for this net change. For this consolidation method, you will need to specify a source code. You can also consolidate by fiscal period and source ledger, which would group together all transactions from the same subledger into a single net transaction. Selecting this option will allow you to choose which modules you want to consolidate. You will have to specify a source code for the consolidation to indicate the transaction type, as the first two characters of the source code will be the source ledger that is being consolidated. You can also consolidate by fiscal period and source code, which will group all similar transaction types together and consolidate into a single entry. For multi-currency companies, transactions are always consolidated by source currency in addition to the consolidation methods mentioned. Remember that consolidation is optional and not required. Consolidating entries into single transactions removes the transaction details and thus impacts your ability to perform inquiries and drill down. If the schedule code assigned to recurring entries is not linked to a user, it will not appear on a reminder list and will have to be manually generated. You can manually create a recurring entries batch from this window. You select the run date and the recurring entry code that you are generating. The system will generate all the necessary journal entries and create a batch that can be accessed from the batch list window. The batch will need to be posted. The system keeps track of recurring entry batches created, and the system will not create a recurring entry batch for the same year and period twice. For multi-currency companies, you will find an icon here to create revaluation batches. As explained when setting up revaluation codes, to account for timing differences in exchange rate fluctuations and transaction entry, the revaluation function can be performed to revalue all source balances to functional currency using current exchange rates for financial report processing. Any gains or losses incurred are posted to unrealized gain and loss accounts, and they are reversed in the next period because they are not physical gains or losses, merely entries to reflect the change in exchange rates. From this window, you can enter a batch description. In the grid, you can select the source currencies that you are revaluing and enter an account or segment range to revalue. You then specify the revaluation code from GL Setup that will be used and verify the exchange rate that is being used. The exchange rate will use the journal entry date to find the appropriate rate from the currency exchange rate table in Common Services. You can always override the exchange rate used. When you are ready to perform the revaluation process, you can click the Process button. The system will generate all the necessary journal entries and create a batch that can be accessed from the batch list window. The batch will need to be posted. In terms of month-end and period-end procedures, there is only one function in the GL that is required to be performed at the end of the year, the create new year function. There are no required steps or tasks to perform for a period end. Obviously, you may want to calculate your allocation batches, recurring entry batches, and revaluation batches on a period end basis. And of course you will want to print the necessary reports and financial statements on a period end basis. But in terms of processes that are required to be performed, there is nothing that you have to do. This means that the period end maintenance icon is a bit of a misnomer. The period end maintenance function allows you to delete inactive accounts that are no longer referenced in history, remove transaction history and fiscal set history beyond the number of years specified in GL options, and reset batch numbers to 1. These functions, if used, should only be performed at year end. Remember that if you remove detail history and batch information, you will lose the ability to inquire on transaction details and drill down functionality. In addition to the period end maintenance functions, the clear history function is also something that may be used on a year-end basis. From this window you can clear printed posting journals and deleted and posted batches. Remember again that clearing deleted and posted batches also removes drill down functionality for any transactions in those batches. As mentioned, the only process that needs to be performed at the start of a new fiscal year is the create new year function. Let's first review the year-end process. The first thing that needs to be done in the system to prepare for the new year is to add the new year in the fiscal calendar. This allows transactions to be entered for that year in the subledgers and even in the GL. The only restriction in the GL is that transactions for that new year cannot be posted until the GL is rolled over to the new year. But transactions can be entered and accumulated in open batches. This allows for no stoppage in transaction processing in subledgers at year-end and allows you to prepare for the new year in the GL by entering transactions. The GL includes 2 additional periods for year-end processing. Adjusting and year-end accounting entries can be written to the adjustment period. Closing entries are always written to the closing period. When you are ready to move the GL into the new year, you can access the Create New Year function in GL Periodic Processing. This window will indicate what the new year is and all of the functions and tasks that it performs. It establishes the opening balances in the new year for balance sheet accounts and closes income statement accounts out to retained earnings for the previous year, resetting the balance to 0 for the new year. The Create New Year function can be performed in the GL even if there are open batches waiting to be processed. Of course, before you perform this process, you should make sure that you have a backup of your data set. This function cannot be reversed. When you are ready to proceed, you can click on Process. When the system completes the year-end function, it will print to the default print destination, the closing entries posting journal, and open a confirmation window. To verify that the new year is correct, you can open the GL Options notebook and view the current fiscal year on the posting page. So, to review, for month-end procedures, you will have to define the procedures that meet your information requirements. For year-end procedures, you must add the new year to the fiscal calendar and then use the Create New Year function to roll the GL into the new year. Remember that in GL options, you have the ability to enable or disable the feature to post transactions to previous years. If this option is selected, any time a transaction is posted to a previous year, the system will process a year-end transaction with the original transaction, so it will create the closing entries when it posts the transaction for income statement accounts, or it will update beginning balance information for balance sheet accounts.
Please proceed to Financial Reporter.